Everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Catherine and this is the Literary Latte. I haven't made a video in a little bit. I've been watching Booktube and commenting, but I haven't uploaded a video in a while, so I'm very glad to be back. Today I'm gonna do a little bit of an accumulated book haul. I've had a lot of thrifting. I've been to a lot of small bookstores over the summer on my travels, so I've accumulated quite the stack of books, so I'm excited to get into it. It's been building and building and building, so it's finally time to make a haul video, I think. How was everyone's Halloween? Let me know in the comments what you've been up to this October. Things have been busy here. I live, I've said this like a million times, but in Northern Ontario, and in the summer, nothing happens in the summer. Everyone is on vacation. Every committee pauses. Everything is slow and relaxing, and you're just enjoying the very brief time that it is beautiful here. And then in the fall, everything kicks back up again, so it gets very, very busy all at once. So I've been busy, but overall, good. So let me know in the comments how you have been doing, and I'm just gonna jump right into the video. So I'm gonna start off with some books that I purchased myself at different bookstores through the summer. The first one is Rodham by Curtis Sittenfeld. So I actually have a ton of books from Curtis Sittenfeld on my TBR, and I had no idea that they were all from the same author until Shelley Swearingham recently has done a couple videos talking about this author and reading Rodham and some of her other works and comparing them and reviewing them. So this book has been on my TBR for a really long time. I almost kind of forgot about it until Shelley recently did a video reviewing it. And I think this is a really interesting premise. So it follows, basically, it's kind of like a what would have happened if Hillary Clinton had never married Bill Clinton and she had stayed Hillary Rodham, and what her political career in life would have looked like. So I think it's a really interesting premise. I think it's really interesting to write a work like this about someone who is actively still alive, and at the time of publication, I think this came out in 2020, so would have still been very involved in politics at that time. So I think it's very interesting, and I'm really intrigued to see how I feel about this. The next book that I have is The Devil in the White City: Murder, Magic, and Madness at the Fair That Changed America by Erik Larson. This is about, it's nonfiction that takes place in the late 1800s, and it follows basically the Chicago World's Fair and also the serial killer that was active in Chicago at this time. I've never read anything by Erik Larson. I own The Splendid and the Vile, which came out quite a while ago about Winston Churchill, and I've just never picked that one up, so I'm really intrigued by this author. A lot of the works really stick out to me, so if you've ever read anything by Erik Larson, please let me know in the comments down below. This one is a really interesting premise. I actually found this from my library book club. Basically, it's kind of like a bring your own book club. So every month it's a different genre, and people bring their favorite books or recent reads from that genre to discuss. And this is one of the library's recommended picks for True Crime Month. So I thought this was really interesting. I'm not a huge true crime junkie, but I thought this kind of historical take on true crime is really interesting. So that's why I picked this one up. The next book I have is The Waiting Game: The Untold Story of the Women Who Served the Tudor Queens by Nicola Clark. I'm pretty positive I saw this on Steve Donahue's channel a while ago, although I could be wrong. This is, it's a nonfiction book, again, about the story of the women who served Tudor queens, so they're ladies in waiting. Who are they? How did they get this job? What did they do on the day-to-day? Where did they sleep? Who were they sleeping with? What did their lives look like? I'm really interested in Tudor history. I know almost nothing about Tudor history. It's not something I really covered in school. So I think this will be a fun, kind of unique way to dive into Tudor history, and I'm really interested. And I also am just in general interested in kind of like the upper and lower house kind of stories about people who served back in the day that are lesser known. So I'm really intrigued to dive into this one. The next book is Small Things Like These by Claire Keegan. This is a really, really short little read. It was shortlisted for the Booker in 2022. I know very little about this book. I know it takes place in Ireland, in a small town in Ireland, I believe in the 80s. Yeah, 85, and it follows our protagonist, Bill, and he just discovers something that alters and changes his life. that's all I know about this. I recently saw Book Chat with Pat talk about this story, and I am going to be honeymooning in 2026 in Scotland and Ireland. So one of my upcoming reading goals is to read something by a Scottish or Irish author every single month to kind of prepare and excite me for my trip. So I'm really interested to get into this one. I know it's a very impactful story. I also know there's a movie that Cillian Murphy is in that I really want to see. So I'm hoping to pick this one up in the wintertime. It's a quick little read, and I know a lot of people who have really enjoyed this one. So yes, thank you to Book Chat with Pat for the recommendation, because after I heard her talk about it, that's when I picked this one up. The next book is One Golden Summer by Carly Fortune. I've talked about Carly Fortune a lot on this channel. She makes kind of light, fluffy, summery romance, kind of Emily Henry style books. Her last one was a little disappointing to me, but I'm always going to read everything Carly Fortune puts out because they're just my kind of trash. Like, they're just really feel-good reads for me, and especially because they take place, a lot of them in Northern Ontario, but all of them in Canada. They're very, like, I can really see myself in them. They're very feel-good to me. So I just love these books. So this is her most recent one, and it is kind of like a second edition to her first novel, which is Every Summer After, and it takes place in the same town with the brother of one of the main protagonists in the last story. So I'm very excited to pick this one up in the summertime, probably. So the next books, I'm getting into some books that I thrifted recently. So the next one that I have is Scythe by Neil Shusterman. This follows a world where they've essentially eradicated death. So there's no sickness, there's no disease. So the only way that you can really die is if these powerful beings called scythes come and end your life, essentially. And this follows two teens who have been elected to become scythes, and they don't really want to. So I picked this one up because I had actually thrifted the second one for $1 or something like that at a library book sale. And I've kind of been waiting around to get the first one for a good steal, and I finally did. So I'm excited to dive into this one. I've heard really good things about the story, and I have mentioned this before on my channel, but I work really closely with youth, and I run a monthly book club for young adults, so 12 to 25-year-olds at my workplace. So I always like to read and incorporate a couple YA books a year so I can kind of have good recommendations and things to talk about with youth. So I'm very excited to dive into this one. I've only heard really good things. Okay. The next one is Killers of the Flower Moon, the Osage Murders and the Birth of the FBI. So I obviously have heard of the movie that Leonardo DiCaprio is in, but I didn't even know that this was a book, and I know nothing about this case. So I'm really interested to read this one. I thrifted this one for a couple bucks. It's in perfect condition. And I know a lot about Indigenous history in Canada in a Canadian context, but almost nothing about American Indigenous history. It's a big education gap for me, so I'm hoping this will be a good story. If you've read it, let me know in the comments down below, and I'm really excited to get to this one. Okay, the next one, I actually think this is really interesting. So I've talked about on my channel before that I am very interested in reading and watching documentaries about high control groups, high control religions, and cults. It's a real special interest of mine. And someone in the comments of my video recommended this book, Breaking Free: How I Escaped Polygamy, the FLDS Cult, and My Father Warren Jeffs. And this is written by Rachel Jeffs, one of his daughters. So it was maybe not even a week after someone in the comments had recommended this book. I'd never heard of it before, and I found it in my thrift store for a really good deal. So I was really excited to pick this one up. I know a lot about the FLDS. I've watched a couple documentaries about it, and I also watched, there's this YouTube channel, Growing Up in Polygamy, and Sam and his wife make the videos on growing up in polygamy, and he was a member of the FLDS cult. So I know a little bit about this high control religion. It's a fundamentalist or extremist branch of Mormonism, and it's extremely high control, lots of polyamory and things like that. Polygamy, sorry, not polyamory. Yeah, so I'm really interested to read this one. I didn't even know that this book existed, so it's right up my alley, and I'm excited to dive into it. And then the last book was actually a gift from my grandfather. He just sent it to me in the mail, and it's True Canadian War Stories from the Legion magazine. So I don't know anything about the legions in America, but in Canada, there's a Legion magazine that comes out every quarter. And this was something that had been compiled by the Legion magazine in the late 80s. And my grandfather sent this to me because I've been doing a lot of personal research and study about Canadian specific history of World War I and World War II. So battles that Canadians fought in, and looking at things from a Canadian context. And he sent me this book with a really sweet note, basically saying that he thought this would be kind of a good addition to my study because he said that a lot of the works that he's read and recommended to me, they're really great, and they look at Canadian military history from a political stance, from a financial stance, from a strategic stance, but sometimes they're a little bit lacking on personal stories. So this is just an entire compilation of personal Canadian war stories in World War I and World War II. So I'm really excited to dive into this. I have a bit of a World War II reading project that's coming up. I was hoping to do it for Nonfiction November, but I have so much reading and a lot of reading goals that I want to wrap up before the end of the year that I think I'm going to push that reading project into the new year. But I think that this will be a really great addition to that project to make the stories a little bit more personal and impactful, I think. So yeah, those are all of my books, my big stack in my book haul. So thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you sticking around and watching videos on my channel. It means so much to me, and I will see you again soon in the next one. Thanks, bye.